What's up, everybody? Midjourney Fast Hours podcast live.
Live.
Dude, we are so overdue for this. Excited to be here with you guys on this Friday and share this experience. Like I said, I think we've been. This is, if you don't know the origin stories of the podcast, this is how it started. Rory and I just chatting. We got on these. We used to do these live sessions all the time. And then we're like, well, we should probably just do it a little bit more professionally, do it a little bit more seriously. And we try to do these from time to time, but now that I'm thinking about it, Rory, we don't do these enough.
Yeah, we don't do these enough, but I think the times have changed. Maybe the subtleness in preparation has changed just a bit. Like I think the first time we did this, we had absolutely no prep. We just showed up one day and we're like, let's just talk. And I'm not gonna lie to everyone here. I think we kind of do that a little bit now too. But
we do. we absolutely do.
Might have just gotten a little better at it.
We have gotten better at it, and I want to give a quick let's drop where you're listening from. Would love to hear that. We've got so many. This is literally a global show, which I think is probably the most fun thing about this. I mean, we've got people from
Greece.
Let me start at the beginning.
Malaysia, South Africa,
Amsterdam, Costa Rica, Florida, Spain.
Oh hell yeah! Some people tune in on a Friday night.
Philly.
I like that.
Chad, you're in Atlanta. Okay, didn't know that, man. Yeah, I'm also in Atlanta. What's up, man? Switzerland. See my boy Garth Corden in here, dialing in from South Africa. What's up, buddy?
Let's see what else.
Oh, this is awesome. Stephanie.
Super cool.
Brazil, San Francisco, Sao Paulo, France. God, man, you guys are awesome. London. Philippines. Wow, insane.
We're everywhere.
This is awesome. Peter, fellow ATLian, what's up, buddy? Thanks for joining.
Just to give everyone some context, Drew and I got really excited after episode 2 or 3. I think we were the #1 art design podcast in Peru, and we were like, we made it. We made it. So if we have anyone listening from Peru too, shout out. Thanks for listening. We were so amped about that on the Spotify metrics.
That was very cool. That was so cool. Well, guys, the agenda for this show, we're really trying to make this about you guys for this. And that's part of the reason we want to do a live edition is we want to hear from you. We want you to ask questions. We like to do these live sessions, especially when it focuses around questions that are burning in your mind, that maybe there are some things that you don't know, things that you're trying to solve for that you just haven't found a solve for. It could be anything within Midjourney, AI image gen, maybe even in the AI video gen space. Rory's really deep in there. I play with that too. So we can kind of keep you up to date. If you're not familiar with the podcast itself, we usually cover the whole gamut. And if you haven't subscribed, this would be a great opportunity to do so. We're on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple. So with that being said, let me just kind of point out a few quick things here with Q&A. That's where you're going to want to drop any questions. So if you go to the Q&A tab, your top right, drop in your question there. You can also upvote questions. So if you see other good ones that you want to hear the answer to, go ahead and upvote that. Also, I think what we want to try to do a little bit is bring some other people on stage too with us. So the way you can do that is if you have a question you'd like to ask in person, you can also click the raise hand button as well. So there should be an option for that. And that will allow us to kind of bring you on stage. So with that said, Rory, what should we jump into first?
Good question. Also, just a little slight caveat: if anyone has never listened before, you're going to hear a lot of cameos from my daughter Faye. She's very vocal. She likes to be a part of the podcast. So if you're hearing stuff in the background, no, it's her. She just wants to be. She just wants to join everybody. But with that being said, I mean, look, there's office hours this week. I think there was a lot of things to talk about, especially on Midjourney side of things. I tried to listen while babysitting and also while walking my dog in about 10-degree weather outside, going back and forth between mediums here. But I don't know. I think there was a lot of hidden context in what David was saying, what the updates are going to look like. We got a lot of stuff on sort of what they're thinking about with video, what they're thinking about with 3D, what we can expect from version 7. So I think there was a lot of meat on the bone there to talk like kind of where this is all going and what we could expect. Because we've all had this sort of like vision of V7 dropping for like 6 months. It seems like it's been on the precipice, but
I mean,
every
my God.
every office hour, we're delayed 2 weeks, and that continues to sort of snowball into 2 weeks to a month to 2 months to 4 months. But I have a feeling it's pretty close. I don't know. What do you think?
Well, yeah. I mean, we joke about this, but big updates, they always happen when we're traveling. One of us
course.
is completely out of pocket somewhere when something big drops. So I'm going on a vacation in like a week, and I have a feeling that's the inside info you guys need for V7. I have a feeling it'll happen while I'm gone. If it doesn't, that'll be a blessing. But V7 is right around the corner. I think they've really been teasing that for a while, but we do have a timeline anywhere between, I would say at this point, 1 to 3 weeks. So that could be as early as next week. That could be the first week of March, and maybe on the long side, like, mid-March. In case you're not familiar, just to like recap this, V7 too, Rory. I mean, this is one of the exciting pieces of V7, which is not just are we going to get a little bit better with, photorealism or some of these other aspects that you would expect to improve, right? Like hands or faces or textures or blah, 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 but consistent characters, right?
Yes.
One of the main things, I would say one of the few things that Midjourney feels slightly behind on is the consistent character aspect in terms of the consistency and the quality that comes with that. That's going to be the core part of that V7 update. I know you're amped about that. I'm amped about that. And I think that's probably been a little bit of a deterrent of why I haven't used it as much, just because it's not where it needs to be, right?
Totally. 100%. Because I think, you look at reasons why people go to other platforms, right? Personally, I have to go to other platforms too when I want to do characters. I can do them on Midjourney. It's just a lot of legwork to get there, and a lot of like editing, and just more. It's easier when you can go train models or utilize other character consistency features. But a few weeks back, David said something that's sort of like really, I don't want to say shocked me, but they don't. We've mentioned this before on the podcast, but he doesn't tend to gloat too much on features or really like hype stuff up. But he had like someone asked them like what they ranked the current consistent character sort of like feature now, and he said it's like a 4 out of 10, but he said this next one's going to be a 9 out of 10. So I mean, we're going to be tough judges on that, I think, because I think we know what to expect based on using the other models. But this one, to me, if they nail that, right, like we've already hit sort of critical mass in terms of photorealism. I think everyone has their own ways of getting there. There's a million different ways to do it on Midjourney and the other platforms. But then, like, where does that go? So I think it's storytelling, right? So you need consistent characters, objects, things like that. And they keep referring to it now as like Omni reference, like whatever that means.
Yes.
I don't know if that means product too, or like, if you have a car, if that'll, make it a car go from scene to scene, or like certain props in the scene or a character. I don't know how they're going to roll it out unless I missed that in terms of like functionality, but I'm guessing it might be like the mood board sort of situation where it generates a code and then you use that code across everything. Because it seems like,
oh yeah,
kind of how they're doing it.
That would be interesting.
Things.
Yeah. So in case you are not familiar with the term Omni reference, what we're talking about here is, the ability to use consistent characters, but maybe also use that as an object, consistency component too, right? Like an object or an item or a thing. So I think that's very compelling, right? Part of the problem that exists, not just in Midjourney, but in general in this space, is there are so many tools and you got to jump around so much, right? Ideally, you've got 1 to 2 platforms that you're doing most of the work in, and not 5 or 6. And so, like, I think for me, like, this is another reason to stay within Midjourney. If we can get that to a really high quality level, I think that's going to solve so many problems. I think one of the other things that is interesting for Midjourney, obviously at a high level, is just video in 3D, right?
Yes.
There's been a lot of talk with that on office hours. In terms of timing on that, though, that's kind of been this really elusive thing. On one call, you might hear that it's like it feels close. On another call, you feel like, oh, they're not even close, right? So I think the latest office hours basically like, hey, look, video is probably like a mid-year thing, You know,
Yeah.
I think if you were to ask us this question at this time last year, we were thinking, oh, that's going to be beginning of the year kind of thing, right?
And it's also changed, right? Like this is what flip flop total from 2 weeks ago, where he was like, David was saying along the lines of how expensive it is to train their own proprietary model. They were going to probably look towards partnerships or doing, potential API integration. And then like that sort of just flipped on its head in 2 weeks and goes, I think we can build a really good model really quick. And I was like, what changed? Like that's a big jump to go from it's going to be really
Yes.
expensive and we're going to work with partners to it's going to be way too expensive to work with partners. We can do it ourselves. And that was interesting to me because then he was also what was sort of interesting. Another interesting tidbit I picked up on that is it said, I don't want to release $1,000 a month model. It can be really good, but I don't want to do that. So we might have to like sort of relinquish some quality for a little bit more functionality. And I was like, again, another one I haven't heard because I'm guessing that would be a big lift. I don't know if anyone here personally, I'm not going to drop $1,000 a month right now. That's way too much for what it is at this point.
Yeah.
But that was interesting to me because I think they've always sort of been, I think, relatively priced appropriately. Like I don't think
I do
it's
too.
overly expensive. I think it's sort of right where it needs to be. I know for some people it's a lot. I think for what you get out of it and the quality you get out of it and what you can do with it, it's priced appropriately. But they're trying to. It seems like it's almost going to be like a different sort of packaging when they add video into the mix. Like it might be more expensive. So I'm
Totally.
interested in how they're going to roll this out.
You know
But
what?
I'm
They
starting to
did
see,
say this.
yeah,
They did say this in the office hour. They're aiming for a video tool that is accessible at the $10 a month price point, right? Like there's probably tiers to that too, right? But I think what they're trying to accomplish is not gatekeep from people that are on, the lower tier plans, which obviously is great, but that's also hard to do. So
yeah,
yeah, I'm curious to see how that takes shape. We also talked last time about what would we pay for like a premium model, and I think you and I were both kind of on the same page with that, right? It's like,
yeah,
look, if you were to just maybe double the price, I would do it.
yeah,
Like probably
easy.
no questions asked. But yeah, there's a lot of moving parts and variables there.
The other interesting thing with that is like the one thing that I think Midjourney does really well, and it seems to be at like a core ethos of them, is they want to make things like accessible, not just from a pricing standpoint, but from like a creation standpoint. So, like, there's no other tool. Sorry, everyone, this is just a personal opinion of mine, where I can type in photo of a car and get something that looks like it's going to be on the cover of a magazine. What Midjourney sometimes lacks in control, it overcompensates for in creativity. So, like to me as a beginner who wouldn't know how to prompt and maybe it's my first time on the platform, I type that in, like I'm hooked because that's awesome. Not like going
Totally.
to no offense to Flux or any other models like that. You got to put in some effort to get something that looks really good from a prompting standpoint, at least. And like, that might not be a hook. Like that's not setting the hook in. That's like me knowing what I want and how to control it. That's not like new user acquisition. So I'm hoping video, what he means by not just accessibility from the pricing standpoint is like I can type something in and get a cool video and not have to go through the process of like, let me write a 3-paragraph prompt with ChatGPT to get something that like subtly looks like it's cool. So that's if I was spending all this time developing and seeing what's going on all the other platforms, right? Like knowing Sora made it so hard and so expensive to get something good out of it that like, I think that nice little medium is like, how can we get something that's cool, artistic, sort of like, very visually pleasing without having to go to the nth degree of prompting. So that's just a personal opinion of mine. I don't, do you
Yeah,
feel that way? Yeah, all right.
totally. No, I'm on the same page as you. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Um,
It's a big thing. I think because at this point you have the diehards like us who talk about this every day, but there are people that are just getting onto these platforms and they need a little hand holding. They need a little bit of
yeah,
like spark,
yep,
right? So
yeah, for sure. You know what? I think maybe this is a good place to pivot from office hours. I mean, we've got questions lining up here, so I'm thinking we start to attack
all right.
these.
Keep it cool.
We've already got a group of questions in there. Again, if you want to ask a question, feel free to drop that in the Q&A or You could raise your hand too and ask your question if you want to come on stage with us. So let's go ahead and look at this one here. Do you guys have some custom GPT for Midjourney or Kling or something? Yes.
Yes.
Yes, we do.
You want to go for that one first?
Well, I think we both do. I think you have one for video also, I believe, right? Like, and these things aren't super hard to build, but if you don't want to mess with it, like you're more than welcome to go about it that way and use ours. I just pulled my link here to mine. Feel free to use that. And I think the context here, right, is this is a great tool, especially if you don't know how to prompt. If you're not a prompt expert. And one of the things that we always talk about, and I like to talk about, is don't feel like starting with an empty box is the only way to prompt. There are literally 30 to 40 ways to prompt inside of Midjourney, right? So you don't have to start from scratch. You could use a tool like these that we're sharing here and just describe roughly what kind of things you're looking for and say, put this into a prompt format, and it'll use the structure that we've provided to turn that into a prompt. Okay. So like, that's a perfect example of like, you don't have to be this prompt expert to be great at getting results, that are high quality in tools like Midjourney. So just keep that in mind. But
totally. And I think it's good to like the multifunctionality of the tools. Like, this isn't just like a prompt generator where I generate all of my prompts. This is like if I see something that I like and I want to like deconstruct it, especially something that I do of myself, not like taking, other images from outside. Midjourney's describe function is fairly decent. I'd say it's a lot better now than it was 2 weeks ago, now that they have it on the web-based, sort of like they used to be on Discord. But in reality, you find something, I want to extract some text out of this. I like to paste my images into the generator and sort of like extract tokens and extract things from it, rebuild, sort of play with things so I don't have to just type all that out. Because I do tend to get a little crazy with the text prompting. But
yeah, text prompting's great, dude. And that's
yeah.
the thing is, it's just one of many tools that you can use. And I think becoming efficient at knowing how to prompt is absolutely still a very valuable asset, right? Because at some point you need to know how to explicitly say some of the things that you want that you might not be able to get from, a GPT, or you might not be able to get from Midjourney or the platform that you're using. So
yeah. Also, I see a question or a comment here from Luke. The problem is some don't really have that specific knowledge, like camera settings, compositions, designs. It's a great point. That's why this stuff is really useful. But also, it helps you understand, right? Like, I think that's so much easier in terms of building composition and like different photo, realistic scenarios. Like, I've learned a lot from Drew on different lens types and why he uses this stuff, because he's a real photographer, right? So like, I start to apply that stuff, it makes more sense. I start to dig in a little bit more on composition. Then it also becomes easier to iterate your prompts. Like, I'm looking at this image and saying, like, I don't like the way X is. I know what that variable is to sort of swap it out. Like that's too wide of a shot, but I'm using, an 8mm lens. Maybe I need to use a, 85mm lens just to like really focus in on the subject. So once you start to play with this stuff and you see how it affects each output, I think it's really helpful for that kind of stuff. Not to sidebar, just thought that was a really good comment. Wanted to shout it out.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. Also, I was just going to say with things like composition too, don't forget about the ability to use editor to make the composition yours, right? To manipulate the composition, because what happens, right, is if you don't prompt for it, Midjourney still has this default aesthetic where it likes to put things right in the middle of the frame, right? Which is cool. Also, though, if you know a little bit about like how people, can perceive images and how to tell different stories, sometimes you want things in, a rule of thirds, or to the left side, or to the top right, right? Like, there are strategic decisions that you can make, and you don't have to prompt for it anymore, right? Like, you could just go into something like, let's just take, let's get a little visual here. Why
Screen
not?
sharing, let's do it.
Yeah, like I'm just pulling up an example image here, but like, just go into any image, go into editor, right? I can change this to whatever aspect ratio I want, obviously. But don't forget the ability to do something like this, right? And this isn't the best example, but you can move this wherever you want. You can scale this down, right? Like, so this is such a powerful thing that I don't think a lot of people really talk about that much, to really build out the perception and the storytelling aspect of any image. You don't have to just call it a day after you've received an image that you like and upscale it, right? Like, you can do any of this extra stuff to take it to the next level. So I just think that's worth pointing out.
Yeah, we should also probably link when we drop this onto YouTube. We'll link the micro decisions sort of episode that we have. We'll drop that one in the bucket. That was a fun one. Drew and I went through like just creating something randomly on the fly and like where we took it, what options you have, like what we would think about doing creatively. It's a fun way to just sort of go about your own workflow too. So we'll drop that one in the bucket for everyone. Once it's maybe I'll pull it up on my side over here and drop it in the comments. But there's
do it. Yeah, I'm gonna share this one because I feel like this is a question we could both attack pretty easily here. So how to get less perfect human faces, Rory? Chaos 5 to 10 doesn't really help. Yeah, chaos isn't going to help. Chaos is just to differentiate your feed. What you're going to want to focus on are the text, the token part of what you're prompting, right? And Rory and I have a few different ways to go there. Rory, what do you typically do when you're thinking about creating, let's just call it like average, for lack of a better word, like an average face, a normal face, something that doesn't look like a model out of a magazine, right?
So there's a few different tactics I use there. Number one, I like to use the token everyday fill in the blank. So everyday, whoever you're describing, everyday mailman, everyday fitness instructor, everyday whatever. There's that tends to work really well. Also, natural, like sort of natural look works really well from a token perspective. Also if anyone's familiar with negative prompting, a lot of times I'll go into there and put no makeup or no airbrushing or no anything like that to give it more like skin texture, because I like I like to use the tokens also like natural skin texture and blemishes. That stuff tends to really come through. But the one way I'm finding really useful is essentially the mood board function now. So I trained a mood board on just images from my iPhone. People that look like, it's my friends, it's people from New York. So it's a very diverse group of faces, and none of them are models, I promise you. So I've been adding that a lot to a lot of my prompts to give things a more sort of realism look to it without having so much sort of model face. So the other thing, without having to really probably steal Drew's thunder on some of this, is you can prompt for specific features in the face and the way that it looks. And also just know that Midjourney and any other image sort of database image generator is probably getting pulled from a lot of, fashion photography that has been, online. The idea behind fashion photography isn't to have facial expressions, it's to be focused on the clothes. So that's why you get that model face a lot. What I call is just like, because it's not, you're not supposed to look at the face, you're supposed to look at the clothes. So you have to prompt for some expression. So bringing some life to that can help. So that's a little bit further than the question of what we're talking about, but also like really focusing on the features, the eye color, sometimes, dark shadows under the eyes, stubble, like textures.
Think about the face. Add one distinct feature of a face, right? Is it glasses? Is it like a scar under the eye? Is it, a certain kind of earring, right? Like, there are just different ways to, again, break out of the box of default options that you're going to get. So I agree with everything Rory just said. And I love this question because this is such a common question that a lot of people run into. You mentioned natural looking, everyday, average. Those are all awesome. Like, you could probably get there with that. And depending on if you're also stating a photography style or where this photo came from, that's another great way that we've talked about in the past of really like categorizing something within Midjourney's training. So for example, there's a big difference between prompting for editorial photography and then your subject, right? And documentary photography in your subject.
Great point.
Or iPhone photography in your subject, or Snapchat photo in your subject, right? You try that right now and you're going to get 4 totally different results, and you'll see what we're talking about. So also think about it like that, under the context of how you're going to use it. Maybe that one doesn't apply, but that's a great way to instantly, in a very succinct manner, categorize that with Midjourney's understanding to break out of that.
The other thing that Garth mentioned here, great point from a parameters standpoint. If you drop below the default of stylize, so stylize default is 100, so you're already getting a little baseline stylized add into it. So if you drop that into the, typically I'll even go to the S40 to S80 range, like that lower than the default, to sort of like get rid of some of the AI look. That works. Or if anyone wants to have a little bit of fun, you can go on the weird side. I like a little bit of weird in the parameter settings. Man, anyway, don't go crazy. Like weird, like 1 through 10 will get you there.
It does a
10
lot.
might even be too much sometimes. So weird 1 actually works really well. Just like takes a little bit of that sort of like stone face, chiseled jawline, big thick lips, in every single image, takes that sort of down a little bit. So there's there's a lot. But that's a good one, Garth. Good shout out there. Good call on the stylize.
Okay, let me go through these questions really quick. Let me bring up another one here. Let's do this one. Are you using Midjourney mood board? Are you using mood boards in your global profiles for control? If so, how are you getting the best results and consistent? Yes. I want to make sure I'm thinking about the question the right way. Yeah, we're both using mood boards right now. Heavy. And the way we like to think about mood boards is almost like a more flexible version of SREFs in that manner, and a controllable SREF environment, if you will, right? So, obviously you've got style references, which again, if you're going to give me like a top 3 list of favorite features, I think that's probably on our top 3, both of us. It's so powerful. You can do so many things with that. Mood boards is a nice extension of that. So it just allows you to do some extra stuff with it. You can even take style codes, for example, right, which are specific number sequences of style references, and you could build a mood board off of that, right? Because some of the style codes, when you dig into those, they kind of have a baked in profile, for lack of a better word, of what they generate. Meaning, like, some can veer a little bit further off the prompt than others. Some may have like more of a documentary style kind of component once you really dial up the stylization. Mood boards, you can really control all those things much better, right? Because you could take a style code that you like, maybe take, dozen images or so that you've created with that style reference, cherry pick those, and now you've got a more controllable but flexible environment in that sense.
Makes sense. Yeah, I think the mood boards, we've talked a lot about this lately because we just think it's awesome. But mood boards, to me, you can think about them not as like it needs to be this whole entire crafted aesthetic. It can just be a part of a whole. So if you want something to look very specific, like I have one that has more of like a sepia tone to it, just like a subtle sepia tone, where it's like, if I want to add that into an image just to like give it a little bit more control of like, that's what I'm looking for without having to utilize it. You can think about it like a token, like if you're thinking about tokens, like motion, like I want this sort of like motion blur, shutter drag, as Drew likes to prompt for every once in a while. Like you can build a mood board for just motion, so that instead of having to type in motion and describe the way you want it, like you can just attach the mood board. So it's essentially like thinking about it like a token. So they don't have to be these massive like aesthetic overhauls in terms of mood boards. You can just use it for little pieces. So thinking about like building like that instead of just always words. And sometimes it's a little bit easier to control or get, sort of more visual pop from what you're looking for. So that, and was the other part of the question about the global profile with mood boards?
Yeah, let me bring it up.
All right.
Yeah. I'm wondering if that question relates to, are you stacking your mood board with your global profile when you're selecting it? So maybe let's also just kind of show this visually in case you're not familiar. So let me stop this. Let me pull this up. This might be a little bit easier to talk through. So what we're talking about here now is, like, let's just say, Fox. And you have this ability to basically select your global profile. You can leave that on default or not. But what I think this question's asking, like, would you also maybe attach that in addition to another mood board, or do you just run the mood board itself? Right? Is that sort of the question, I wonder? I think the way that
One
I
is
look at
more,
it is I typically run the global profile stacked on top of whatever mood board or mood boards I'm running, just because the personalization element is getting me closer to the things that I like anyway. It's not so distinctive a difference, right? Because you've curated the mood board at the same time. But yeah, I typically leave it on. Don't you, Rory?
yeah. I mean, I like to sort of run it and test against both just to see like if it
Like we
makes a
could do
large
that right.
difference.
We could do that right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sometimes, yeah, sometimes the mood board and the global profile together look radically different than just using the mood board. So I just like it to kind of run both. This is where Midjourney just like loves me because I just burn through fast hours doing this.
Yeah.
Let me test.
Yeah,
Let me
exactly.
test this profile. Let me test that profile. So the other thing, while Drew is doing this, just a note on the profile codes and the personalization that you can create more than one profile. So you doesn't just always have to be your global profile. Like the way that I'm utilizing it is you really only have to rank 40 images now. So number one, my global profile is basically like my generic style. But my generic style is very rough, gritty, textured, contrast, like very, very harsh. So I have a personalization that I just go through the images one by one and rank softer looking images that have like a very soft texture, soft features, more, volumetric looking, things like that. Maybe more animation. And then like that'll be another profile. If I need something for that, if I need a softer look, I'll attach that to it. So again, everything is pieces of a whole here. It's just like how do we stack these little tiny, modifiers with each other? Because I think the different profiles, the personalization profiles, I think that's really underutilized probably. I think by most because it can really affect the image a lot. So what are we running here? While I was just
Yeah, I
rambling
think
on.
so. We're just running two different things, right? One with just the mood board selected, one with the mood board and the global profile selected, right? I mean, they're not that different. I mean, if we're looking at these just from the outside, they're not that different. I would
Mhm.
say if you were to look at this and really try to split hairs here, right? Like you could say, hey, maybe the composition or what's in the frame here probably aligns a little bit closer to what I like just based on the personalization, right? So it's pretty much
Mhm.
what we thought.
Yeah. And it depends, honestly, it depends too on if you created the mood board with your own images from Midjourney, because sometimes I'm probably using a lot of my personalization code in those images, so it's going to look fairly similar. It's a good question though, because again, this is where I eat my hours away, which is
Oh,
testing against both to see the difference, right? Then it's like, oh, come on, can I stack 5 more
Is
mood
it is
boards
this
onto
our
this thing?
regular reminder to use permutations? Because I feel like it is, right? Like
It
this
would
is
be.
guys, this is where it's like using permutations is amazing. If you're not familiar with permutations, right? Like this is where you're using the curly bracket, you're doing something like this. And then whatever prompt I'm running 3 different variations of that just by typing it one time, right? It's going to run once with stylize 300, once with 6, once with 1000. Same can be true for anything, any single token or word or phrase in your prompt. So it doesn't have to be the parameter. I like to use it for stylize. I like to use it for style weight. I like to use it for aspect ratio, right? So maybe I've got an idea of editorial photography vacation in Italy, but I want to run a 16:9. I also want to run a 4:5, right? Like those are going to give you 2 different results. You got to think about the training data that takes place with this stuff, right? Like 4:5 is typically going to be your vertical portrait style format. So you're more likely to get things like that. 16:9 landscape, you're more likely to get something that feels like, travel photography or something that incorporates more of the scene itself. So
100%. This is a good question because I think there's probably a lot of confusion around it if you're not obsessed like we are. I just think mood boards and personalization is probably like another differentiating factor that Midjourney has provided for us and for everyone. But again, like I've done a number of things with some studios, some marketing companies, things like that, where they're having a lot of trouble with getting photorealism. Which again, if they're not very familiar with prompting, you're starting from ground zero. Sometimes a personalization code that you just train and you just go through the training images on the personalization training, just the most hyper photorealistic ones you can find and just select those.
yeah,
So it might take
yes,
you 20 minutes, but just like go for those. Like don't do any animation, don't do anything else. just like hyper photorealistic, bang, 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 that personalization code is going to be like super useful for that. It's just going to help. So again, these things are maybe not the intended use that Midjourney had for us, but
No, but I
we're
think
taking them and running with
that's
them.
right though. I mean, like, look, we don't know what's behind the curtain in terms of what Midjourney is looking for when you're going in to the situation where you've got to rank an A or a B. Like sometimes it's very obvious, right? So again, if you don't have personalization set up, by the way, this is a great reminder. Do that.
Do that.
All you got to do is click personalize. I'm going to go into my global profile. Okay. Now this one, I don't, let me skip this one. Let's get something where it's like, okay, what are we actually trying to achieve here? Like these two, like they're neither one is photorealism, right? And they do have two color, like different color profiles. What is Midjourney actually taking away from this if I were to select one? Is it taking the colors? Is it taking the contrast? Is it taking the actual like subject in mind? Is it just looking at the difference in style? Like we don't know. We don't know. And so that to Rory's point, it's probably a good strategy to just keep it really tight on something, right? So like I would probably never do either one of these, so I would skip it, right? Same thing here. Like this one's kind of cool. This is something I would never prompt for. I might actually select that one. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I just think like if it's something I could see myself doing or something in that style, I might go ahead and select it. The important thing to keep in mind here is a lot of these photos that you're going to see in the A and B rankings, they're not that great.
I
There
don't know
is
what
a
it
also I
is.
do want to remind
I don't get it. I don't get why they choose
I
certain
don't get
things.
it. I don't get it either.
But there's got
Either
to be
like
some reason.
there's got to be an intentional reason for that. The other thing I was just going to mention real quick, Rory, was beyond ranking A and B images here, the other way to, to basically indicate to Midjourney your preference is to like photos from the explore page. Now, the big question for a long time is like, do these have the same side, like type of weight as an A and B ranking, pair ranking? And couldn't get that answer for the longest time. I did get that answer. We shared this and it's like, we got to confirm that it doesn't hold the same weight. We don't know how much weight, but it's definitely not the same as the A and B pair rankings, which to me is wild because it's like, this seems like a much more efficient way to rank in that sense, because it's like if you're curating images that feel really top notch, right? And they're really various in styles, this gives me an opportunity to just go ahead and select these things and kind of like really prioritize that.
Yeah. I think it's, look, everyone's got their own strategies. Like for my global profile, I really only rank images that I like. Like there's no strategy there. It's like just that. Then I have a profile
Yeah.
where I rank every image, regardless of if I like them, just to see how that affects it. Then I have one for softer images. Then I have one for super photorealistic. Then I have one for, more colorful experimental texture sort of look and feel. So I think it's really, really personal, if that's not too much of a pun there. But there's a lot of ways you can go about it. But I think if you're looking for specific uses, it can be very helpful. I think that's how they calibrate the models. Like when they have those ranking parties, right? Like I think so. It's very similar. I guess you're personalizing your own little part of V6 right now, which is cool. But that's a useful strategy, useful structure. But I think we let's keep going because I think we did a
Let's
good bit
keep
on that
going.
one.
Yeah, let's go here. What's your opinion on the UI currently on the website? Would you like to see something different?
There's only a few little things that I would like to change. I wish I could name my mood boards or profile codes something so I could just how it was in Discord with preferred options, so I don't have to just search the codes every once in a while or drop down. The drop down's nice, but also then even when you're trying to like prompt within flow, it's not the easiest. Sometimes it's like, oh, I want to use my profile code from 3 profile codes ago because they update all the time. And then I have to go back and find an image with that profile code up, copy, paste it. So it can get annoying, but I think they've done really good. Personally, I find it very easy to use at the current state. There's a few things that I don't particularly like, but simple things like why is variety and chaos the same thing and they call it 2 different things in multiple places. But other than that,
Yes.
The new folders thing was nice. That was a new
the folders thing.
piece.
Yeah. So they did make a quick update to that. We could show that really quickly. The other thing for the UI for me is probably like the one that drives me nuts. There's like one that really drives me nuts, and it's the full editor and retexture.
Fair
Like,
enough.
to me, this just, I know it's a V1, but this is so frustrating. Because what'll happen is like you'll quickly forget whether you're an edit or retexture, number one. Two, like the moderation's pretty strong when you bring in these images into this, right? So that's the other part of it. Also, when you drop anything in here, so like let's just take, like let's go to here. Let's just grab anything. It doesn't even matter, right? Like let's just grab this URL, edit. Let's drop this in here. Okay. So I do like my favorite part about this, that suggest prompt thing, because you're going to need to have a prompt in there to make an edit to begin with, right? So if I want to change this 1 to like a 16:9, I need to have words in there. I can do that now. Okay. But like, this whole piece of whether I'm in edit or retexture drives me nuts. Also, like it's in its own environment too, right? So once I click something that I want to retexture here, it's only going to show up here. It's not going to show up in my in my archive unless I've upscaled it. And like if I go back to view all, this to me never works great. Like when I go back and like let's take this out. Like let's go, I don't know, just randomly, really, like I could go anywhere. But if I go back further in time on past projects that I've retextured, it gives me like errors. Let's see this, like original session not found, creating a new one. Like, what are we doing?
Yeah.
So like this to me could be shored up quite a bit. Like I run into those kind of problems all the time. We already talked about this too, but if you filter too with upscales, nothing shows up. Why?
No, it's weird.
Right? Like, so there are just little things like that that drive me nuts with the UI. Not to go on a tangent, but like that's kind of that.
Well, I think that's the way they're gating it, right? Like they have this feature gated for certain tiers, so it's like you can use it, but I think that's why you have to upscale it to gallery, which is why it's not showing up. I don't know why they do it this way. Personally, I think just release it to everyone. It's not like I barely use it outside of, I use the other editor way more. Retexture sometimes, but I think it's like, all right, just charge us more for video, and add this one. If everyone heard that one, that was a pretty good. That was.
She was like, "Yo, I haven't gotten a word in yet." So
that was a pretty good solo. But yeah, there's certain things. I'm always like sort of grateful remembering back to the days of Discord and how choppy some of this used to be, and now it's like so quick on the website, so easy. But maybe that's me. Maybe I'm the only one.
Love it.
What else we got here?
Who wants to come on stage? Go, raise your hand with the question. Let's have a question in mind. Let's bring somebody else into this mix too. What do you think, Rory?
Bring it up. Let's see. Let's test Goldcast a little bit here. See how it works.
Yeah, let's do it. While we're waiting for that, I'm gonna pull up this last question here. I don't want to compare here. Have you checked Visual Electric and its UI? It's so simpler, more intuitive. Yeah, we talked about that a few episodes ago. Visual Electric. I love the UI of Visual Electric. And like there's some really good stuff that I think is generated on there. I haven't spent too much time on there. Obviously, like you have to have a paid plan at some point. Like you can create some amount of free images, but Visual Electric's a cool place for inspiration too.
Yeah, it's a solid platform, right? I think this is just like, again, it comes down to personal preference a lot of the times. Like if you like the way Flux outputs, if you like the way Visual Electric outputs, it's totally on that. I think Midjourney. If you've gotten the hook set in, it's really hard to leave. That's just me. It's really hard to go elsewhere.
Okay, we got Vlad joining the stage. Vlad, what's going on?
There we go.
Hey, what's up? Good to see you guys. Can you hear me?
Yeah,
we got you.
Awesome. Thanks for doing that. I appreciate it. And Rory, I've been following you on LinkedIn for quite a bit. Drew, I just got to know you yesterday from the post. Pretty cool stuff you produce, Rory. And one question I had for you, and for Drew as well. Like, what would you advise somebody who's just starting off, right? Not that don't have that expertise, I guess, with prompting or the whatever the coding you just used. You can tell that I don't have a lot of experience with that. And do you have any aha moments today, like throughout that journey, that you're like, oh shit, I wish I knew that when I've started? Anything to share there as well?
Totally.
Great question.
Yeah, man. Look, honestly, I think it's about having fun, like having no sort of agenda when you start. Like if I was trying to do this for like a work project and having to do this right away and like figure it out, to me that wouldn't be fun. So it's honestly like I think Drew does a good job of this, is like mining the explore page, like finding some inspiration, what you like. Maybe you want to take something in a different direction. Oftentimes, that was how I learned. Was like it's on the explore page. Like I didn't even know what to prompt in the beginning because I just didn't have an idea of where this could go. So I would pull certain things from the explore page. You copy the prompt in, and then it's like, oh, what happens if I change the color of this? How does this alter it? So I think sometimes doing that is a great way. Or the other way that I personally love is just starting with like I call it like the prompt elevator. So it's like I type in the word car. All right, cool. Now it generates car. Then I'll go next one, like in a village. And then like, okay, cool. See what it generates. Then like with a fire in the background, and like just keep building step by step so you can see what each little token or each little phrase does to the image. Because then you start to get an understanding of what you can control and then like where that stuff fits in. To me, that was always like the most useful thing for me. But there was definitely aha moments. Like I think the first time I got something that was like I couldn't distinguish from reality or not, which was back in V4, like using like super technical photography terminology, and I was like, oh, whoa. So that was just like getting what I wanted, I think was really important, because I think a lot of times you have this idea in your head and like it's loosely there, but this one specifically, like when V4 hit and you actually got like I think it was I wanted like a BMW driving on the street and a F-16 jet flying like perpendicular parallel to it in the air and like with a lot of cinematic look to it. Yeah, I redid it recently, but that was a V4 image, and I was like, once I got that, I was like, oh, no way. Everyone goes down the alien route, the futuristic route, and doing cool apartments and stuff like that. But it's like, what happens if I can do this? Can I control this? But that was definitely an aha moment back for me. But
that to me is the big thing, Rory.
Yeah.
Like when we look back on the early days, it's like, do you have almost like the language repository of some of these things? Because it is a little bit of a skill and adjustment to know how to say what you want, because you're essentially describing this to something that cannot see. So like we talk about this as like a method or a framework is just like, think about describing something that cannot see. It only knows what you're given. So like you have to be explicit around the things that that you want. And it's okay not to be explicit if you've got some creative liberty on the other hand. And to Rory's point, like, the explore page is a great thing for that. Same with the search tab, right? Like we use this sometimes if it's like, if we've got a client project or if there was something like this or that and the other, we've never prompted it before. Like I think we did this with escalator, right? Rory?
Yeah.
Like it's like, okay, well, let's type escalator in. Is there something in here that stands out in terms of like the idea that's in our head? And I think this is the actual image too that we started with. But it was like, let's click into this one. Okay, like what can we learn from this, right? Did they say something specific for the camera angle or for that red lighting, the moodiness, the contrast of the image? Like what's in here? It turns out like this isn't a very complicated prompt. So to me, that tells me, okay, it's a little bit like lucky that they got this. But like what we could learn from like something else is like, let's find one where there's like just more detail, right? There's like something in here that we can learn from. And of course, like probably we're not going to find a great example live. Come on, man. But like, this is where it's like, when you first get in there, you don't know a lot of the parameters. You don't know a lot of the language. And so stuff like that. I also really like this while we're here. I talk about this every chance I get, but it's the search within the search. So you can really fine tune your results based on something that you click on. So escalator, we clicked on this. Now, if you click this search icon, we're going to get things that are even closer to that specific one, right? And so now you can see all these kind of have that neon lighting in them too. So now we're getting closer. And so if you think about that, using that as a bridge to get from 0 to 1 to craft your prompt, like that can help and take you a long way too. So
totally
awesome.
Parameters.
Yeah, thanks for sharing. Appreciate it.
Parameters can help too. Very, very fun to play with once you start getting into them. But I'd say what did like dovetail right onto what Drew just said there. It's like, again, just you play around, you figure out sort of like where these things, how the model sort of reacts to certain words or certain tokens. It becomes way easier, and sometimes working off a structure can help. If you have like a basic prompt structure, what has to go into, if you broke down an image, what has to go into an actual image to compose it, right? It's like you have your subject, what they're doing, the environment where it takes place. You have sort of like the lighting, the composition, like all that stuff goes into making an image. So if you wanted to control it that way, put it all in, then it's like, oh, I don't like this lighting. Let's just flip the lighting out. It's already in there. So, Midjourney will go in every image generator. Like if you don't prompt for lighting, it's going to make it up. So if you want to control it, you just add a prompt for it, right? It's like you can't have an image without lighting. That's like the best example.
Yeah.
That I can come up with: textures, colors, things like that. If you don't specify it, I think the best example I use a lot, I use this example all the time, and not to like pontificate here too much. I think it's just useful. It's like if I said to everyone in the chat here, like, picture a woman in the park, like everyone right now is picturing something different because that statement's like super ambiguous, and your like imagination just has to create something, right? Like I didn't say where it is, what time of day it is, what the environment's like. But if I said, picture a woman in the park at night under a spotlight wearing cozy clothes, it's New York, it's snowing, like everyone's focus is narrowed down to something a lot closer. That's like essentially how the generators work, right? So if you think about it in those terms, that's sort of how it's functioning, very loosely, less technically. But I think that one can help too from some of the prompting sometimes. Not to go overboard here, sorry.
Yeah, love that, dude. That was good.
Yeah, love that.
Yeah, awesome.
This is cool.
Thanks, Vlad.
I like the feature, man. Thanks, Vlad.
Yeah, thank
Good
you,
questions.
Appreciate it.
Good to see you, man. Okay, I'm saying like let's get at least one more person up here. I love the live stuff. We want to see you guys. Like, don't worry. Okay, here we go. We got one more.
Hello.
What's going on,
I'm
Mohammed?
good.
How
How
you doing, man?
about you? I'm good. I'm good. I'm great. Just let me introduce myself a little bit first. Okay, I'm working in 2D animation field in like Disney style and game 2D. Usually Midjourney it's focusing in a way of realistic photo and realistic images. Now, if you can help me or show me the way how I can get advanced from Midjourney in background right now. Let's say in like Sonic game, pixel art background, let's say 2D flat illustration drawing, because I'm facing problem that sometimes it goes weird or doesn't give me that what I'm looking for. So I end up download the image, then edit it in Photoshop. I need to found the right way to save the time, because AI making a huge impact in the whole world and saving a lot of time. I need to get all the advance from AI at the moment.
Okay.
I hope I say my question clear and understand.
I think so. Like, well, just to clarify, are you saying like how can you get that specific type of result as opposed to getting just photorealistic stuff? Okay.
Yes. Because Midjourney, yes. Usually AI gives the real photo.
I think it's as simple as having one specific, like it could be as little as having one specific word, similar to what we just talked about with the search feature, right? If you've got like sketch, for example, if that's it, or if it's 2D sketch, or like give me something. How would you describe it in 2 words?
Like I say, I need, if I'm gonna say it, because I'm working
2D
like
flat
2D.
image.
Yeah, 2D Adobe Illustrator, let's say style, vector style slash something like this. But like I'm asking, like I need 2 to 3 basic color with that 2 shade, let's say, or shadow. But for background, not necessary for like a human, because
I mean, there are so many different ways that you could do this. Okay, so I think just for the sake of being like super succinct and attacking your question without like us rambling on too much, it's using something like a search functionality like this. Have a couple words in mind. You can use this to curate something that feels close and attack it similar to what we just did with Vlad. The other ability would be to take an actual image in here and use that as the style reference. Right. So you could take any image, go in here, use this as a style reference. And now, right, we've already indicated we're using a style reference. You would just need to play around with the style weight to get that style applied in the way that you want, right? The amount that you want. So it's really like you could find any outside resource. Doesn't have to be a Midjourney image. Use that as a style reference, play around with style weighting, and get what you want. You could also take an image into a GPT like we were talking about and get it to describe that for you, right? So then you're not having to think about, oh, what are the words to describe? How would I get this, right? Like have the GPT do the work for you. And then you've got a prompt.
Right on site.
Yeah, exactly. Right, you could use describe. I mean, there are like literally a handful of ways you could do it. So that shouldn't be an obstacle for you. I mean, there are just a number of different ways to do it. Go ahead, Rory.
There's two things here also. I used to, when I was trying to do patterns and keep them flat, I used to run into this a lot. So like oftentimes the stylize 100 can be too much. So drop the stylize down into like maybe like the 20 to 50 range. So if if you're finding that it looks too much, there's too much depth to it, like it's not flat, it's not vector looking. Sometimes the style is a problem because the 100 can be too much for that. So that's one thing that I remember from trying to do a lot of this. And the other thing too is, someone mentioned here mood boards too, bring in sort of the images, the style and look that you're trying to achieve, bring them in, create a mood board. It'll hopefully create off that very easily. But Drew's right with the sref, that can be really helpful. Describe function on Midjourney. It's like once you find the tokens too, they'll really help. Like typically I've done 2D vector or a 2D flat image in vector or Illustrator file or things like that. It tends to flatten things out and then drop the stylize down to like 50 to start. Often it'll help a lot versus having to like sort of describe everything, because that's where I think that's where a lot of people get lost. I get lost there too, trying to over text prompt. Sometimes the parameters can help a lot there.
That's a great point. Yeah. See, I mean, like even this, there's so many variables within here, right? I just played around with the style weights to see how much I want to apply that, but I've got a stylize of 300. I could also play around with this number, right? Like, so to Rory's point, that could be a 50, that could be a 300, or that could be 1,000. And again, you're going to get totally different results based on that. So
it's going to be like 3D render at that point, probably, right? It's just like Midjourney with stylize on art, I found, like on 2D sort of flat art, likes to give it depth the higher up you go on the stylized chart. So it seems to like add more depth and 3D aesthetic to it, as you can see, like in that top one.
Exactly.
Right?
Yep.
The lower you go, the flatter it gets. So stylized can be the culprit there sometimes.
Yep. Yep. Yeah, I think for your 2D flat, like lower stylized would be best. But Mohammed, thanks for the question, man. That's a great question, and I'm glad. Hopefully that helps quite a bit.
Actually, I have another request. Can we have this session as a recorded, or it's difficult to have it?
That's a great question. So this is going to be, we're going to turn this into our podcast episode for this week. So you'll have this. This should be in video format. This is our first time using Goldcast for this, so we're going to try to figure out how we do that. It should be pretty simple, but yeah, absolutely.
And it'll be on YouTube also. Subtle plugs.
There you go. There you go. Okay, so, let's see if we can get. Let's see if we can get somebody else on here really quick. We got
Hi,
Flora.
guys.
What's going on,
Flora?
Hey, I have a question. I've been working like on a project here, and we've been trying to rebuild something that happened like in the end of the 90s, and it's really specific. So I've been having a really hard time like reconstructing a neighborhood. I live in Brazil, so it has to be in São Paulo in a very specific neighborhood with a very specific type of analogical camera with a very specific type of film. And what I've been finding is that Midjourney keeps making the pictures way too good for that time. So do you guys have like any idea? Like, yeah, it's like such, really high definition and stuff. So do you guys have any idea of how do I make it less good? Yeah. That's kind of my question, because I feel like it just is, it's such good quality imaging that it didn't exist at that time. I need more grain, and I need more, like flares and like just dust in the image and stuff like that. And I've had a really, really hard time to get that blurry kind of, but when I, input some tokens like blur or, like lens or something, it feels either non-authentic, and I really need that authentic factor, but I also need the I can't, it can't look fake, it just cannot have that AI feel to it. It needs to look like it was taken at that time, so do you guys have any clues? Because I feel like such modern technology, it just cannot deal with old stuff. I even tried putting a Walkman in, and it just like, what the fuck is a Walkman? I'm sorry, my language, but it's just like, what is a Walkman? I don't know what that is. I'm sorry.
Yeah, go ahead, Rory.
So I would attack this from a number of different ways. Number one, mood boarding here could be your best friend to do this at scale. So like putting a bunch of like images in that style of like film stock that you're trying to get into a mood board to then do that at scale, but from like an individual level on the photos. Like, are you prompting with like a certain film stock or a certain look, or are you describing the whole thing? Okay. So
no, I have like a list of film stock and stuff like that, and I've been trying. I've been using what did you call them, the bracket thingy to try to generate more options. Yeah, I've been using that to try to find the most possibilities that look authentic, but it's just been frustrating.
Yeah, totally get that, because sometimes like I'll use a couple different tokens here, depending on, Drew mentioned this one before. Documentary photography sometimes can be a little bit better than editorial or cinematic still or anything like that, because those put too much like emphasis on like perfection. Amateur photography can work well there. Also, like using the like what you want, like the film grain, the light leaks. Also using the time decade and the year if you're not using that. I'm sure you're trying all this stuff. The other side of it, again, this is stylize. It does screw up a lot. So it like if it makes things look really cool, but you often lose sort of that fidelity. So if you drop that down, a lot of times, like the way I'm thinking about it for you might be 70, like stylize 75 might be a good range there. Still have some of the visual aesthetic, but drop a little bit of that like crazy sort of like overpowering effect that Midjourney can have. Sometimes dropping the quality level too. So there's the parameter.
Great idea.
0.5 might work better in certain instances.
You said
depending
Q?
on that. Yeah. So -- Q. The baseline is 1, which is where it'll always be at default. If you go to 2, it's going to be super detailed. If you go down to 0.5, it might work. I'd have to test it to see if it would work on something like that. But I found that once you find an image that nails it, like building off that SREF. So like use that as the SREF and then like keep going with that one, keep getting more scenes in that. That'll get you to a mood board, and then a mood board will get you to like the scale. But it's a lot of testing in terms of like the aesthetic of what you're looking for, but that's how I would attack it. That's just me personally, but it's kind of like it's the because some of the, I don't know if you're prompting for like film grain and like light leaks or dust and stuff like that, because it works if you do it. It's just it's a little bit uncontrollable sometimes.
Yeah. It some of them, like, I guess just today I think I did about, I don't know, 1,000 pictures, and maybe 3 came out okay, and I need a large quantity because it's for a commercial, so I need like a lot.
You could even if you find a nice style reference, weight it at a very low level, apply just a little bit of that style to the new photo, right? Like that could be something worth trying too. I'm just thinking of other ideas outside of what Rory mentioned. I think Rory's pretty spot on there. So
for the Walkman itself, might be super tough. I might go and, if you can, use Korea editor for that. If you train a model on the Walkman, and then like within Korea, this sounds like a lot of technical stuff right now. It's fairly easy. You'll probably need like 5 images of a Walkman. And then you can edit. You can sort of like highlight the area you want it in, select like, here's my Walkman model, and then push enter and put it in there. Midjourney, you can do that. It's not going to be as sort of sharp and defined as it would be, but the one suggestion I would have there for in painting with editor is like, oh, I have this table. I want to put the Walkman on the table. It's not getting it. If you select it and then use like an image reference of the Walkman, like as like, okay, I'm editing now, and then I'm going to attach like in this little area, this little square of the image.
Yeah.
And then you attach the image as an image reference and then dial up the image weight. So if you do that for image weight to 1.52 typically works. That's a good way to
you know what, Rory?
slot
I
it
think
in
on
there.
those, like I'm seeing a lot of like, because we unlocked that actually on a podcast, but it was like you know, editor is great for removing and changing, but to add something, you know, it's hard unless you do an image reference. And that was something that we found out. But if you, to Rory's point, if you go in, you provide an image reference inside of editor and you weight that, Rory, I think I found the most success like between that 0.5 and 1 range of image weighting for whatever you're trying to add. It does a pretty good job. The other thing I would say too, like because of the Walkman, I'm always thinking of like different, maybe it's not Walkman specifically, but I always think of other synonyms for things if it doesn't get it. That's just a general rule. But for the Walkman specifically, I would probably go in and specify a year, who makes it, the color of it, right? Like just any other details you can provide it with. But
there's one other idea is that, again, like for finding, for like, to me, it's always like getting the sref. Like once you get like the sref image, you can really play with it. So, you know, sometimes an image from that time period, like a real one, that might work. And then using that as like bringing that in and then using image weight, like image weight 3. So it comes out basically almost in the same style aesthetic if you're trying to do that. And then using that as a, you know, as an image reference or a sref to build. Like those kind of things can be super helpful. It's just like, it's like getting the sref. It's like once the sref is cracked, the rest of it falls into place. But it's finding that sref, you know, translating the prompt. But also these GPTs that we shared, like that's, for example, that was how we used to have to break down brands. Like when we work with them, when you couldn't do anything other than text prompt. So we'd have to like put in a brand image into our GPT, like extract all the tokens and then rebuild it out in a text prompt fashion and then like iterate that. So like similar fashion sometimes might work. I know this is all like conjecture. It's all testing at a certain point. But sometimes these ideas maybe spark something.
That was awesome. Awesome question.
Thank you. I feel like it's just so many levels because I have to like, it's the time, it's the type of picture. And then it's also like, I feel like Midjourney, sometimes it just feels like Brazil, everybody's poor. So you just like write down Brazil and then it just makes favelas, or Rio. It just forgets that it's a huge country and there's so much culture here. And then it just puts favelas and that's it. You know, it's a little frustrating.
And that's like one of those things where you might actually be better off not putting it in because Midjourney isn't great right now with historical landmarks, generally speaking, right? Like, and so to your point, the training data is probably built off a lot of that stuff. So it defaults to that, right? And so maybe you just describe it without, you know, saying
gives it a city of God, like a city of God look every time.
Exactly.
Right? And then, you know,
it looks like
it's not a good look.
Exactly.
Not to say it's not a good look. It's just like that's what defaults, especially I found with Brazil, because I do end up prompting a lot of that stuff because it's very colorful and cool. But
thanks for the question, Flora.
Yeah.
Thank you, guys.
Want to see if we can try to get to a couple more people here before we run out of time. We have Carlos, Luke, and Allar in the queue.
Hey guys.
Guys, we're gonna try to run through these. Carlos, welcome, man.
Thank you, man. First off, huge fan of everything you guys are doing. Course is amazing. All the content's been amazing. So just thank you guys for putting this up. I have like 3 really quick questions. So I think the first one is, where is that GPT that you guys are mentioning? I've been trying to find it in the chat, couldn't find it. And then my other 2 questions, one is just in terms of the future of what you guys are doing. Are you guys planning a video course? The Midjourney course, I think, is the best one out there. I thought that was like, I still go to.
Well, whose do you have? Because Rory's got a video course.
For AI video, I think you mean, right?
AI video, correct.
Exactly. Yeah, no, I don't have one of those yet. But
yeah, I mean, I'm following everything you're doing now on X and, you know, LinkedIn. I'm all over it. I think it's just like super well done. So just wondering if you guys have a future of putting out a course for that. And then I think my third question is just more about, how do you manage all of the different platforms, right? So like there's Midjourney, there's Kriya, then there's all the video, and there's all of them have these different workflows that I'm trying to wrap my head around, but it's hard to really figure out. So just getting into your brains and in terms of like, you guys are able to do this, like, you know, really, really long time, where like people like me, I'm working and I'm trying to figure out where to jump in and where to put that time. So just any advice there?
Totally. I think one thing to answer the question on the video course, every time I try to get going on one of these things, they all update and they all change.
Yeah,
and it's so fast. Like Midjourney used to be like you got like a couple months in between. This one, it's like every 2 weeks is a new feature and then it changes. So that's the problem with the video. It might be something we maybe more produce live if we're gonna do it. I think because it's just at that time there's no like going back through 15 modules and like updating every single feature that's been changed. It's so much. I hate to say that, but it's a lot. But in regards to like keeping up, man, like luckily this is sort of like the job for us. So it's like creating the content. It forces sort of like problem solving and learning, and then like we have to post about stuff. So, when we're doing that, it's like, oh, what can this be used for? Oh, can I use this? Oh, can I get creative here? I think, it's hard. I think if it wasn't for me right now doing all these different platforms, I'd probably have to choose one or two to get good at. I think finding the ones that sort of you like playing with the most, like because they all hopscotch on the video side, right? It's like Runway comes out the gate swinging, and then it's like, okay, they pause because they're in development, and then it's like Kling comes out, awesome, killer. Then it's like Minimax comes out, it's like, oh, that's even more amazing. Sora, cool. I like to find the features that I like within them and then use them for that stuff. So like today I did something on LinkedIn where it was like I used Midjourney to create the images, Kling elements, like putting the two things together and blending the video. But I didn't get what I wanted out of the blend. I got two parts of the images that I like, or two parts of the videos. I like the beginning part and I like the end of another one. But then I was like, oh, Sora, redeeming quality, has the blend feature where I can put those two together and mash them. So I think it's like feature specific right now until they all get a little bit more homogenized. Personally, really liking Google VO right now. I think it's the nicest mixture, even without really like being able to bring in your own images, of like text to video, where it like listens to you, has enough flair to it, has enough like sort of firepower visually to get you where you want, but also not like doesn't have a lot of crazy morphing or like go off on its own direction. But yeah, like I hate to say this, but I have like certain uses for certain tools. I think that's probably,
that's just where we're at, unfortunately.
And they're going to define their direction soon, right? Like none of them have really defined their direction except for Runway. I feel like that's going to be they're going after the production. You see it in the tools they roll out. Kling, I don't necessarily know. Minimax, I don't necessarily know. Pika seems like it wants to be social media. Like that's where it's going to sort of find its niche. Like they're all going to have to sort that out sooner or later of where they want to like fit in, because there's competition everywhere, right? Hope that answered something. That's a lot of.
That's really helpful. I think that's the thing you were saying is figuring out which are the right platforms for which problem that you're trying to solve.
Yeah.
But it's just I got the year Black Friday sale. I bought the year subscription for Korea, and I've probably gotten into it like 4 times because
I'll get in there.
You know what I mean? I'm so into I'm working so hard on Midjourney and Kling and Runway. That's like, all right, what's the right use case for this? But yeah.
So Korea, to me, the best thing to get familiar with, like as a transferable skill set in there, is training models. So you can train the models within Korea, meaning like you could take this image of the water bottle here, give it 5 pictures of the water bottle, and then put the water bottle in your images. That to me is just a useful skill set, because then you can see sort of where to go. It's also understanding that Flux, like from an image generation standpoint, likes a little bit of a different prompt than Midjourney, a little bit more natural language. It's a good way to get a feel. So honestly, I think if you have a Midjourney skill set and a Flux skill set for image generation, you can pretty much use any of them across the board. The video generators too, when it comes to prompting, like if you understand how to prompt one of them, text to video, most of the time, image to video is just taking out a little bit of it because you already have a defined aesthetic. You don't need to really describe it. And then they all somewhat similarly work along the same sort of process. So if you learn it's like baseline skill sets versus like tools, if that makes sense. So it's like, image generation, video generation, model training, things like that. I think that's, and Korea right now has the real-time 3D. which I think is how Midjourney is going to work too. So it's sometimes this stuff is just good for skill set building versus just like tool feature itself. Again, I'm like being very general here. So I apologize.
No, you're not. No, it's definitely it's great.
Yeah.
Thanks for the question, Carlos. Good to see you, man. Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you guys for everything you're doing again.
Appreciate it.
Thanks, brother. Appreciate it. All right, we got two more. Let's do two more of these on stage to round this out. We've got Luke. He's been waiting for a while, and then we'll get to my man Allar to wrap this baby up. Luke, what's going on?
Hi, thanks for this one. It's very helpful. And my first question is, do you have any video where I can learn how to create consistent? I want to create a short film where like it's very consistent. Do you have any
consistent characters?
Yeah, consistent characters.
Yeah.
Do you have any video for that?
So Rory has got. I'll answer this for you, Rory. But I mean, Rory's got a ton of great information on how to do that right now within Midjourney. I would say, unless you're really, really comfortable with Midjourney, I'd probably just wait for this update before you really go hard in that with Midjourney. It's just going to be so much better than what's currently there. It's the problem that is just it's not as consistent as you would like. And the roundabout ways to kind of do it, especially when you're adding in more than one character, just are a little bit too hard, you know? So that's just my 2 cents. Rory, anything you want to add on that?
2 other options outside of Midjourney might be helpful here if you're trying to just do it for a little bit more of a personal project than like actually looking for, to create something for a brand or a campaign. Like Korea, like I just mentioned before, on Korea, you can train a model. So if you can build the character, you can train the model on there. The other thing too to play with that's really fun is on Minimax. So Minimax has they call it subject reference. So basically, if you have one image of a character, you can put it in as like the subject reference and like add that person into a scene. So you just basically just use the same person in every scene. You can create the story. You can also do this with Pika, I believe now. I think it's called Pika Editions or Ingredients, one of the two.
Yeah, Ingredients, I think.
Yeah, Ingredients. Yeah, Pika. Also, Kling can do this now with elements. So it has elements. So basically, you uploading either like the character or the environment into those places. I think typically the character is probably the easiest thing to upload, and then just keep generating. Kling takes a really long time for elements, probably like 20 minutes of generation. Minimax much quicker. But those are like, if it's not about being hyper precise and like just having fun, I would definitely go that route instead of trying to like work through it on Midjourney. It's like a discouraging process. Like you can do it. Honestly, it just takes a lot of time.
It's a discouraging process.
Yeah.
Bro, I mean, really though. Yeah. I think
depending on how intricate the character is. Yeah.
Give Midjourney a couple weeks. I have a feeling that's going to be solved for you. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But
my last question.
Go ahead.
Yeah. What do you think for you guys? What functions do you want Midjourney or the next tools do you want for you personally? What improvements? Yeah.
I want the character reference. That's the one. Like that to me feels like the missing piece. Once that's achieved, that or just a multi-subject reference where I can put 2 people or 2 things in one image.
Which they said that was going to be a part of it too. Not just the one consistent character, but more than one.
Oh, I see.
I think for me, it's the camera movement. It's I think what I guess is going to take place with the 3D thing. It's like you create a shot of something. You got an image. What if you could just roll around 5 or 10 degrees to the left or right, or top or bottom, right? Like that to me would be amazing. Just to again, like break out of the default composition that you get, tell interesting stories. Because a lot of time you'll get it like an image and you're just like, damn, I like that, but like I wish I could just move this a little bit this way. And you just can't do that. So I would think like that's probably mine.
Last one that they did mention, David did, it was like a 5-second thing that he mentioned on the office hours with character designer, which I think that'd be really cool. Like just basically like a video game where you're designing your character and then you can just insert them into the image. Like I would love to do that. That sounds like a lot of fun. So that to me is going to just like, again, we've hit this critical mass of like how much further can you push photorealism or like style. It's like now it has to go into storytelling. So I think that's where we're going to start to see more storytelling stuff that's coming out from them, and I'm looking forward to it because it's going to be fun when you add video, you kind of have to have a storytelling element. So I think they're understanding like what comes next, in sort of progression. So not to, again, go too far on that one, but those are awesome questions, man.
Thanks, Luke.
Last question.
Real quick, because we want to get one more in here before we wrap up.
Do Midjourney have integrations with? Is that available with other apps?
Like API?
Not yet. Yeah, I don't know if they're going to do that. They don't seem like they want to. Feels like that's probably a long shot if it's ever going to happen. But that could change. They flip flop a lot on certain ideas. So, one day it just might be available. But for now, I think it's really like Flux is the game there. I think that's pretty much what everything's working off of at this point. There's others, but
that's definitely. Thank you, Drew. Thank you, Rory.
Thanks, man.
Thanks, Luke. Appreciate you being patient, man. Thanks for joining us today. Great to meet you.
Thank you.
All right, last one. Allar, where are you, man? There you are.
Hey, gang. You hear me?
We got you.
We got you, dude.
Okay, that's nice. Just wanted to say hi to guys and love the stuff what you're doing.
It's good to see you in person and not just as a profile picture.
Likewise, man.
Likewise,
so me and Allar we did a chat a long time ago, but we're overdue. We need to get you on the show anyway. Guys, if you're still with us, there's still a couple dozen people that are here. If you don't follow Allar, give this guy a follow. He does some great stuff, and I love. The best part about this is like we all kind of create different things, we all do different things. This is like definitely an artistic, creative expression component, and a piece of us goes into this. And you can see that come through with, Rory stuff, Allar stuff, and probably anybody in here stuff. Like Gnarly's in here. So I'm now convinced, Rory, that that's not you unless you have like this other laptop going on the side. But our boy Gnarly's in here. What's up, man? But Allar, dude, I'm loving the stuff that you're doing, man. You're doing some great things. And, this is another guy that's really, I think, well-versed with a lot of the tools too. Like, just like Rory, you guys are always, any day, like you're doing something with a new tool and you're just trying it and you're posting something about it, which I think is super, super helpful for a lot of people to see.
Did really, really cool stuff. I think there was a couple, maybe it was like a week or two ago. My time's all in a warp. That's super clean. It was like a Porsche against a mountain, and it was like very layered and like beautifully composed. It's a very, very peaceful little piece of video that you created. I thought that was awesome, man. That was really nice. That one would have put as like a background on my phone or something.
Okay, yeah, thanks, guys. A lot of positive words, and I'm also a huge fan of your guys' content and the mood board stuff. Super, super nice that you're doing, and I'm recently going more deep in this ref sauce, and I'm also trying to go more deeper in the mood board stuff as well. So yeah, a lot of stuff to cook and a lot of crazy tools and a lot of, workflows to implement with these different AI video tools, AI image tools. Like the space is crazy. And today I just had my first time to finally play around VO2, right? But I bought my first premium account in there, but I got error that too much stuff, too much people using in that. Still nothing.
If anyone's not familiar with this, Free Pick just dropped the access to VO2. I don't know if it's the full model. I haven't been on there yet. Is it a 8-second gen? Is it a 5-second gen? How does it come out? Or did you not even get to output anything from it?
No output, but it was 5 seconds. 5-second one, okay.
Yeah. So
let's hope the best. Yeah.
It's really cool. I can say that just by being lucky enough to get in there and test it. It's fun, and I like it a lot. But
I can see that crazy results. It's like unlimited stuff. Whatever it's in your head, you can just type in, and it do. Mostly everything.
I saw what Rory did with
no
the
image
fishing
needed.
thing.
No Midjourney needed. Just type the text in, and you're done. Go ahead.
I didn't think it could do that. I didn't think it could, but it handles it so well. It's very coherent, very, very sort of very lifelike in terms of camera movement too. It has a little bit of camera shake. It has a little bit of like extra sort of, instead of it just being like, push in, it'll like push in and like kind of track up a little bit in a way, or, orbit around in a less sort of like robotic fashion. It'll be a little bit more sort of change the depth or the sort of level of the perspective, which I appreciate. It feels a lot more real in that sense. But
yeah, you can direct it a lot in like with camera movement and all this stuff, like a complete scene.
Yeah, it's great.
Well, you know what stood out to me about that was, Rory, the first time you showed me that clip of what you were building with the fishing one, right? And you brought this up. It was a great point. It's like, look, a lot of people are doing the video stuff and it all tends to be like sci-fi-ish, right? But like, what about more of this like documentary style, like realism type approach? And that was where, when I saw that clip, I was like, oh man, this is wild. I actually haven't played with VO yet. Still don't have access. Maybe I'll look into this free pick thing after this. But yeah, man, the future is promising with that stuff.
Yeah, it's great. I think I just, documentary junkie over here. What can I say? I like the sometimes the reenactments, to me, they're so cheesy. It's like, let's make them fun, spice them up a little bit. I feel like it's like not that big of part of the story. Like the story is the story, like when it comes to documentaries. So, sometimes a little bit of extra flair could be nice. Maybe AI is a little bit of a place for that. It doesn't have to be major production, but dude, awesome work, by the way. Just every time I see your stuff pop up on Twitter or LinkedIn, I'm just like, that pleases my eyes. I like that.
Yeah, much appreciated. Yeah, really nice to hear that.
Yeah.
Allar, you're the man, man. Let's chat. We got to get you on the pod here soon. Would love to schedule that. I know we'd have a good time with that one.
Yeah, I need it.
All right, brother. Good to see you, man.
Okay. Good to see you, dude. Later.
Take care.
All right, guys. Bye. We're gonna wrap this one up. Went over. It's hard to especially when you get people involved with the questions. There's so much good stuff here. So many things to tackle. We went over, but this was a lot of fun. Let us know if this was just as much fun for you guys. I think we should probably do this maybe on a little bit more of a regular occasion, Rory. Like maybe we do this live session, I don't know, at least once a month. Like maybe we bring that component back. I do love kind of getting reminded of the things that people are struggling with and are trying to like unlock. But and Valerio's here. Valerio's here. What up, man?
Yes. All the way from Rome. Love that. We got the other thing too is it's nice to we might have to mine that Brazil idea for an episode. We might have to go through and try to figure that one out as an episode. I like that. That was good. That's a perfect use case. I think that's probably happening to a lot of people. Right. So that one made a lot of sense. It's cool to do it live.
That's a really good one because there's so many different variables you're trying to think through. And just like if you're creating that, you're probably like, oh, I think I solved this, but then you got another problem, right? And so there are a couple different problems you're trying to solve in one thing. But yeah, that was an awesome example Flora gave us. Gnarly thinks we should do something on X Spaces too. Yeah, we probably should. We should.
We're lazy, man, sometimes.
Good to see you guys.
Got to do a collab with Gnarly one of these days, considering we have the exact same aesthetic preference.
Yeah, you guys should. Yeah. Well, guys, thank you for joining us. If you don't already, just a reminder, this is a recording. This will be the podcast for this week. So, you can find this on YouTube, Spotify. Podcast is called Midjourney Fast Hours. You can find us there. Make sure you subscribe if you're not already. Damn, I just stole your thunder too, didn't I?
Like and subscribe.
That's your line.
Gotta make
say sorry, man.
YouTube.
It was just like it was flowing. It was flowing.
Yeah. Hey, man. It's all good. We're doing it live.
Yeah, man. Thank you guys. This was so much fun. Needed this going into the weekend.
Yeah. No, awesome. Thanks everyone for tuning in. Great questions. Awesome interaction in the comment section. Wish I got to see more of that, but let's do it again sometime.
Let's do it.
Later.
Later, guys.